In the heart of Mississippi, where family ties run deep and a person's word is their bond, lived a young man named Carson Sistrunk. At just 24 years old, Carson was a gentle giant, standing tall at 6'4" with what everyone called a heart of gold. He was the kind of person you could count on, a reliable welder who never missed a day of work and loved the simple things in life. Hunting, fishing, and spending time outdoors were his passions. He was deeply rooted in his community in Pearl, a devoted son to his mother, Darlene, and a constant presence in his church. Carson was trusting, maybe even too trusting for the world he was about to enter. Then came the message, a digital whisper from a world away. On Snapchat, he met a woman named Sierra Jane Insco. To Carson, she seemed like the perfect match, a self-proclaimed country girl who shared his interests. Her online photos painted a picture of someone who loved the outdoors, just like him. It was an easy connection, one that felt natural and real. Carson, known for his kindness and open heart, saw no reason to doubt her. He believed he was getting to know someone genuine, a potential partner to share his life with. Little did he know, the person on the other side of the screen was a phantom, an expert in illusion. But who was Sierra Jane Insco really? Behind the curated country girl persona was a tangled history of deception. She was a chameleon, creating multiple social media profiles to fit whatever narrative suited her needs. To some, she was the fun-loving go-get-her Sierra. To others, she was a figure of pity, a young woman tragically battling cancer. This fabricated illness was one of her most cruel deceptions, a tool she used to manipulate friends for money and emotional support. Once her lies were discovered, she would simply vanish, leaving a trail of confusion and betrayal behind her, only to re-emerge with a new story for a new victim. And as the summer of 2022 drew to a close, Sierra had a new, singular focus. She had been telling people for months about her one big birthday wish. It wasn't jewelry or a vacation or anything small. What Sierra wanted, more than anything, was a nice truck, specifically a powerful, impressive truck. Around this same time, she connected with Carson Sistrunk, the proud owner of a gleaming silver Ford Raptor. A coincidence? Or was it something far more sinister? It was a plan quietly taking shape, a dark ambition that would soon collide with an unsuspecting young man's life. It was Labor Day weekend in 2022, a time for family and relaxation. Carson Sistrunk told his mother, Darlene, that he was heading out. He was finally going to meet the woman he'd been talking to online. He climbed into his prized Ford Raptor and began the 50-mile drive to New Hebron, a journey filled with anticipation and hope. He was on his way to meet Sierra. For Carson, this was the start of something exciting. For Sierra, it was the final step of a meticulously laid plan. The last time anyone who knew him saw him, he was driving off, a smile on his face, completely unaware of the darkness that awaited him. Surveillance cameras from a convenience store in New Hebron captured a telling moment. There was Carson, looking relaxed and at ease, standing by his truck with Sierra. The footage showed them talking, everything appearing perfectly normal. At one point, another person even leaned in through the passenger window to speak briefly with Sierra. Carson showed no signs of distress. He was simply a young man on a date. This grainy video would become the last known image of him alive. From that convenience store, he and Sierra drove off together, disappearing into the secluded backroads of rural Mississippi and into the night. When Carson didn't show up for his shift at work on Tuesday, the alarm bells began to ring. It was completely out of character. He was never late, let alone a no-show. His family's calls went straight to voicemail, and their worried text messages were met with an unnerving silence. Panic set in. Darlene knew something was terribly wrong and reported her son missing. The search began, but the first clue came from an unexpected place. Police found Carson's silver Ford Raptor parked in a public lot in New Hebron, and leaning against it, as if she owned it, was Sierra Jane Insco. When questioned by the police, Sierra's story was a masterclass in deflection. She claimed she didn't know anyone named Carson Sistrunk. The truck? She said she had just bought it. According to her, she paid cash to a stranger she met. And no, there was no paperwork. Investigators pointed out what looked like bloodstains inside the cab and on the truck bed. Sierra had an answer for that too. She said she had hit a deer. It was a simple, almost believable excuse. But the officers were skeptical. Her story was too convenient, too clean, and it was about to fall apart under the unblinking eye of forensic science. The investigation began with the truck. Sierra's story about hitting a deer was a simple lie, but the truth was far more complex and gruesome. Forensic teams went over the Ford Raptor with painstaking detail. The reddish-brown stains she had so casually dismissed were carefully collected and sent to the lab for analysis. The results came back quickly, and they were conclusive. The blood was not from an animal, it was human, and when they ran the DNA profile, it was a direct match to the missing man, Carson Sistrunk. Sierra's lie had been exposed. The truck was no longer just a vehicle, it was a crime scene. As investigators processed the truck, another piece of the puzzle fell into place miles away. On September 7th, just 3 days after Carson vanished, an oilfield worker was making his rounds near a remote well site in Jefferson Davis County. He noticed something unusual, tire tracks that looked out of place, leading into a secluded area. His curiosity piqued, he followed them. And there, he made a horrifying discovery. It was the body of a young man. The authorities were called, and it was soon confirmed to be Carson Sistrunk. The search was over, but the nightmare was just beginning for his family. An autopsy revealed the brutal truth of Carson's final moments. He had been shot multiple times. The forensic evidence at the scene told a chilling story. It suggested that Carson had been sitting on the tailgate of his own truck, a relaxed and unsuspecting posture. The bullets had come from a downward angle, indicating he was likely ambushed without any warning. There were no defensive wounds, no signs of a struggle. He never saw it coming. The kind, trusting young man had been lured to a secluded spot and executed. It was a cold, calculated act, and all evidence pointed toward one person. With the discovery of Carson's body, Sierra Jane Insko knew her time was running out. She went on the run, disappearing from New Hebron, but her escape was short-lived. In her desperation, she made a critical mistake. She borrowed a friend's phone to send a message to her mother. That one digital ping was all investigators needed. They tracked her to a neighboring county and arrested her swiftly. Initially, the charge was simple, theft of a vehicle, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the charge would become what it was always meant to be: murder. For months, Sierra Jane Insko maintained her innocence, sticking to her web of lies even as the evidence mounted against her. But the weight of the truth is a heavy burden to carry. In 2023, a grand jury, after reviewing the overwhelming proof presented by the prosecution, handed down an indictment for the murder of Carson Sistrunk. The stage was set for a trial, a public reckoning where every detail of her sinister plot would be laid bare. The community held its breath, waiting for justice. Carson's family prepared for the agony of reliving his final days in a courtroom, but that trial would never happen. In a stunning turn of events in July 2024, Sierra Jane Insko decided to plead guilty. She chose to avoid a trial and face her fate directly. In the courtroom, the moment everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. Standing before the judge, and more importantly, before the grieving family of the man she had murdered, Sierra admitted her guilt. She looked at Carson's loved ones, the people whose lives she had shattered, and confessed. The words hung in the air, a stark and simple admission. She had killed him. There were no more lies, no more stories, just the cold, hard fact. The judge delivered the sentence. For the murder of Carson Sistrunk, Sierra Jane Insko was sentenced to 40 years in prison. It was a long sentence, but one that came with a significant condition. She would be required to serve 35 of those years without any possibility of parole. For decades, she would remain behind bars, a consequence of her greed and cruelty. Justice, in the eyes of the law, had been served. But for the family, no amount of time could ever truly be enough to pay for the life that was stolen from them, for the future that was erased. The echoes of this tragedy still reverberate through the community of Pearl, Mississippi. Carson Sistrunk is remembered not for how he died, but for how he lived. He was a young man with a heart of gold, a loving son, and a loyal friend. His family is left with a void that can never be filled, a profound sadness that will linger for a lifetime. They lost their gentle giant because he trusted the wrong person, a person who saw his kindness not as a virtue, but as a vulnerability, to be exploited for a material possession. It's a heartbreaking reminder that sometimes the greatest dangers are the ones we invite into our lives.